Every single day, you click, you type, you connect to things online. And all these actions, they feel so simple, right? Instant, almost like magic. But underneath that super smooth surface, there is this whole world of hidden complexity, a series of invisible conversations and data exchanges that really define our digital lives. So today, we're going to pull back that curtain and really dig into the hidden layers of your digital life. It all starts with something so ridiculously simple, you probably don't even give it a second thought. I'm talking about plugging in a USB cable. You just want to charge your phone, maybe transfer a photo, but that one physical act, it kicks off this incredibly complex chain of events. So what is actually going on in there? All right, so our journey starts with that physical connection itself. And let me tell you, before things got this simple, they were a complete mess. The USB port, well, it was designed with one single revolutionary goal: to bring some serious order to the chaos. I mean, just look at this. This was the old way. Before the mid-90s, the back of a computer was an absolute nightmare of different plugs for every single device. You had one for your mouse, a totally different one for your keyboard, and a completely separate one for your printer. It was just total chaos. Then, back in 1995, a bunch of companies got together to create one standard: the Universal Serial Bus, or as we all know it, USB. The whole point was right there in the name: universal, one port to rule them all. And it's wild to see just how fast that standard has evolved. Okay, so in 1996, USB 1.0 could move data at 12 megabits per second. Now, fast forward to today, USB 4 version 2.0 is hitting speeds of 80 gigabits per second. That's not just a little improvement, it is a mind-boggling leap in power, all happening through a tiny port that's become a totally normal part of our lives. So we've got the physical connection down, but what about the data itself? Well, it turns out that whenever you move a file, you're not just sending the file, you're also sending a bunch of invisible baggage along with it, extra information that flows right through that same cable. And this invisible baggage, it has a name: metadata. You can think of it like a digital fingerprint on literally everything you create. So if your file is a package, the metadata is the shipping label. It's got all the details: who sent it, when it was sent, what's inside, and where it's been. It's information about the information, and it travels right alongside your photos, your documents, and all your videos. And all of this happens because of something called enumeration. But a much cooler way to think about it is the USB handshake. Before any data can be sent, including that metadata, your devices have this super quick conversation. The second you plug something in, the host, your computer, sends a reset signal. The device says, "Hey, I'm a keyboard." And the host says, "Awesome, here's your unique address, let's get to work." This happens in a flash, completely automatically, and it sets the stage for everything that follows. Now, this idea of a hidden conversation, it's not just limited to a cable. When you connect to the internet, you're plugging into the biggest network of all. In your browser, well, let's just say it's a bit of a chatterbox. Yeah, just like that USB device announces itself, your web browser is constantly sharing information about you. Your IP address, for example, it's like a digital return address. Online trackers and third parties are collecting data about what sites you visit and what you click on, all to build this really detailed profile of you for advertisers. You're not just looking at pages, you're basically broadcasting your interests in a continuous background conversation with the entire web. But what if you want to make that conversation a little more private? Well, tools like encrypted DNS exist to do exactly that. Think of it like putting your web requests into a sealed, unreadable envelope. It basically scrambles the message between your computer and the DNS resolver, which is kind of like the internet's phone book, making it way harder for anyone else to snoop on where you're going online. These digital systems are incredibly complex and surprisingly resilient. But they're definitely not perfect. Sometimes the connections break, the conversations fail, and we're left with the digital equivalent of a ghost, an empty room where something used to be. We have all seen this, the infamous 404, page not found. It's really the internet's polite way of saying, sorry, but whatever you were looking for, it isn't here anymore. It's a dead end, a digital ghost. But here's a surprisingly philosophical way to look at this error. One website frames it with this quote: "Out of nothing, something." A 404 error isn't just a failure. It's actually a reminder that the internet is not some permanent static library. It's a living, breathing, constantly changing thing where pages can and do just vanish into the digital ether. Of course, the reality behind all that philosophical nothingness is usually a lot more mundane. While it feels like this big, mysterious disappearance, a 404 error is often just a simple technical hiccup. Maybe a bad redirect, or a page that was deleted without a forwarding address, or, and this is probably the most common one, just a simple typo we made while typing in the address. Okay, so we've uncovered all these hidden layers of data sharing. The good news is you're not powerless here. There are tools designed specifically to give you way more control over your digital footprint. So let's take a look at a few. Remember that invisible baggage, the metadata stuck to all your files? Well, if you want to share a photo without revealing the exact location it was taken, or a document without showing who edited it last, you can use something called a metadata cleaner. These tools are like a digital scrubber, basically stripping out all that extra data before you share a file, leaving behind just the content you actually wanted to send. So if your regular browser is a chatterbox, then a private browser is the strong, silent type. These browsers are built from the ground up to block all those online trackers and limit the data that websites can collect on you. The whole idea is to stop third parties and advertisers from looking over your shoulder while you move around the web. And for anyone who wants the absolute ultimate level of control, you can go a step further than just an app. There are entire operating systems for mobile phones, like Graphene OS, that are designed from the ground up with privacy as their #1 principle. You actually replace the standard software your phone came with. It's kind of like building a house with security in mind from the foundation up, instead of just adding a better lock to the front door later. So from a simple cable all the way to the entire internet, we've seen that there's always more happening than what we see on the surface. And as technology races forward, this whole cycle of discovery, well, it's far from over. This quote really gets to the heart of it. Experts are pointing out that the rise of AI is creating entirely new hidden layers we haven't even thought of. A new attack surface? That's basically a new set of digital doors and windows that have potential vulnerabilities, with new protocols, new connections, and new kinds of data being exchanged that we are only just starting to understand. The complexity is just going to keep growing. And that leaves us with a final thought. We started this whole thing by looking inside a simple USB cable, a piece of tech from the 90s, and we found this whole world of complexity. Now, as everything from our cars to our coffee makers gets smarter and more connected, the number of these hidden layers is just exploding. So the question isn't really if they exist, but what's going to be the next one we need to pull back and understand?